Hello and welcome to another edition of Another Book Review. This week I'll be reviewing Hominids by Robert J. Sawyer. This is going to be a spoiler full review, so if you haven't gotten a chance to read the book, please do so. I will be spoiling it throughout the after I'm done talking about the author, I'll begin spoils. So if you haven't gotten a chance to read it, check it out, come back. I will be spoiling the book. I'll be talking about the author, going to an overview of the book, and what I liked about it, what I didn't like about it, who I'd recommend the book to, and finish off with what I'll be reading for next time. Robert J. Sawyer is a pretty prolific Canadian science fiction writer, has written for television. He has also won both a Hugo and a Nebula for Best Novel, I believe. This one in 2003 is the first book in a trilogy. I haven't read any of the other books in the trilogy, just the first one. So some of what I say may be answered by the next books in the series. I just don't know because I haven't read them. So everything I'm saying about this book is really just tied to the first book in the trilogy. But he's pretty prolific. He's written a ton of novels. He teaches. So he's a relatively well-known science fiction author. This came out in 2003 and won a Hugo for Best Novel. And what it's about, please turn off if you haven't read the book. I'm going to be spoiling stuff starting 3, 2, 1. I'm also, will say this at the beginning, there's talks of sexual assault in this novel. And I won't be going into, obviously, graphic detail or anything like that, but I just want to give everybody a heads up that will be discussed as well very briefly. So this book, Hominids, is set in, I think, roughly contemporary Canada. So in 2003, there's a team of human researchers who are working on neutrinos and studying and recording neutrinos, who through a scientific experiment are able to pull a Neanderthal from a world where humans became extinct, and instead of Neanderthals like our world. And so they pull a Neanderthal named Poncher into our world, and that side of the story is really him being introduced into this world of humans and learning about humans and the differences between our human world and the Neanderthal world. There he falls in, he has relationships with different characters. There's a doctor, there's members of the team that were working on neutrinos who kind of basically take him under their wing in some ways and become responsible for him. He becomes kind of this global sensation, and they kind of shelter him from the media. There's also a woman named Mary, who's the world's most premier expert of Neanderthals, who we learn early in the novel is a victim of sexual assault. And she is called in to meet with him, and she learns different aspects of the Neanderthal culture, and she uses her knowledge of his culture to kind of bridge the gap between their culture and our culture. The Neanderthals have essentially a reader that's an electronic device embedded in their arm, and they use that to essentially an AI that they learn language from that. And so Poncher is able to communicate through both speaking and also through the use of the AI, and so he's able to communicate with these characters. On the side of Poncher's world, Poncher's best friend, who's a character named Adakor, who was working on Poncher in the same area. They were working on quantum computing, and Adakor is accused of murder because Poncher has gone missing, and he's accused of murder, and most of his story is standing for trial. He befriends Poncher's teenage daughter, and the two of them are able to, at the end of the novel, get Poncher back. So that's in broad strokes the novel. It's relatively straightforward. And then, the other, I guess, subplot is Mary slowly kind of falling in love with Poncher. And then him leaving at the end, and what that pertains, what that foretells. So what did I like about the book? I thought anything dealing with the Neanderthal society I thought was really interesting, and the differences between their society and our society. There's a listing of books that Robert J. Sawyer read at the end of this, and so you kind of understand why their society is like that, the way that it is. They have a population size about 1/30 of the size of our world, and so they're much more in tune with nature in terms of the amount of pollution and the amount of eco footprint that they have compared to normal humans. They have, despite that, advanced technologies. They have, like I said, the AI reader. They also have solar panels and flying cars, and it's implied that they have also these essentially an alibi, almost Minority Report like device that basically records everybody's comings and goings. And so if you, for instance, forgot something or left something or lost something, you can go to basically a hall of records and pull up your memories, and it'll tell you what is going on. And so I thought that was all really interesting. I thought the character Ponnor himself was something of a blank slate, but is also, I think, treated as an intelligent character, and he seems to act in a believable and a realistic way given the character and his circumstances and his kind of situation in life. So I thought that was really well done. And I really liked the opening scene where there's the experiment kind of gone wrong. I thought that was a well-written scene. I guess if there were some things that were negative that I liked a lot less, the more I thought about it, the less I liked the sexual assault angle with Mary. I think that could have been done in different ways in terms of getting her to be reluctant to have this relationship with this character. She, for instance, she has and it's not anything that's graphic, it's just one of those things where, kind of similar to any kind of tragedy, is it being used in a salacious way, or are there ways that you could have not done it because you're going to put off some people when you put in things like sexual assault or anything kind of that is distasteful is maybe not the word, but something that makes people uncomfortable and is going to put off your readers pretty much from the incident it happens. And I think that it could have been done, far be it from me, this guy's written a ton of novels, but I think it could have been handled in different ways. I think if the book was written today, maybe it would have been written differently. I mean, just the fact that she has a professional relationship that I think many people would frown upon, of her being the world's most premier expert on prominent expert in this field, and also is also in love with the only Neanderthal in the world. I think in of itself would have probably caused a lot of characters to have pause, a lot of people to have pause. So that was something that I kind of found irksome. I think that it could have been handled differently, and I think it would have maybe made a lot of people maybe more likely to pick up the book with that, or just the fact that they are kind of, there's this the book, the time that they are actually with this character in our world is like 3 weeks. So the idea that this romance like blossomed over 3 weeks in of itself, there would be reason for pause there too. And so it does feel like the romance is kind of has its foot on the pedal in this book, and the reasons for it not to, I thought, were a little distasteful. And I thought that he could have found other ways to make that the courtship or the potential romance reasons for it not working out. The reason that these two characters can't be together, I think, could have been different than the one he ultimately lands on. I'll put it that way. The other thing I didn't like about it, I thought what would have been interesting to me would have been more on the Akador side. His plot is mostly being in court, and so we're seeing the differences in the criminal justice system between our world and their world, and some of those things make sense. They have a much more, again, I don't know the Canadian legal system, but in our world you would have had a defense attorney, and the idea of you badgering the accused is just not something that is allowed unless they choose to take the witness stand. And so some of those, I guess what I'm saying is I would have liked to have seen other differences in society. I wish less time had been spent on that. And to me, the criminal justice system is very much related to values and ethics and decisions, and it's been the system that has changed over time through a series of laws and iterations that kind of got it to where it was. I would have liked to, and it didn't really seem to me a logical extension of Neanderthals being Neanderthals. I would have liked to have had more of that world kind of explored, and maybe he does it in the follow-up books. But I wish Akador's plot had less to do with the court system, and more of like him exploring that world and explaining, why are there differences among these groups of people. Like just the idea that there was no religion, I thought was really interesting. But the understanding of like, for instance, how do they have all this amazing technology if they're 3% of the population? And they have an inventor who is named in the book, and you're like, well, we have inventors too, but the issue with it isn't the invention, it's really the mass production of all kinds of complicated technology that takes a global supply chain in order for them to make it. And they have roughly 3 or 4 of those technologies, and it's never really explained how any of that stuff gets made. At one point, we learned that there are robotics in the world, and so it's not really quite clear to me how they advance so quickly scientifically to the point where they're roughly 50 years, I would say 50 to 100 years, in the future of where we are, and that's not really explained particularly well, in my opinion. So that kind of tech made no sense, and I thought we spent a lot of time kind of justifying what I called junk science. So the idea of them being able to go between worlds and us finding this world where there are no Neanderthals, I think there's a lot of time spent on explaining that and trying to make it seem plausible. And I thought that was all kind of wasted time. Like I don't think we needed any of that, needed as much of it. I think there's the whole premise of, in Jurassic Park there's the whole scene, and yeah, there's amber, and you can clone mosquitoes, and we can get dinosaur DNA from mosquitoes, and it takes about 5 minutes. In this book, it seemed to take a lot of time for him to set up the junk science, and yeah, there's quantum computing, and the quantum computing has to search for places that didn't have, and so this was the first place that didn't have quantum computing. It's just like, I don't know. For me, it was just kind of unnecessary, and it kind of dragged in places where it was doing that. Overall, I enjoyed it. I think if you're someone who likes speculative fiction, you'll enjoy this. It's a pretty quick read. It actually doesn't take too much time. I thought the parts of it with the world building with the Neanderthals was interesting, and I thought the cultural differences between Neanderthals and humans, all that stuff was interesting. I wish there had been more of it, and I wish it had been more broad. I wish it had not just focused so much on the court case. And the whole underlying court case is kind of dumb too, but like, I wish it had kind of gone into different aspects of the culture and explained, the tech especially, but also just like, are there cultural differences between different areas? Are all Neanderthals like this? Is the political system uniform for everybody? Is it different? I wish there had just been more of that aspect of it. How does the contribution system work? Are you assigned, there's so many like things that I thought were set up that were interesting, and I wish we had gone down maybe more of those rabbit holes a little bit more in this first book. I imagine that that's a lot of what the second and third books are, but I wouldn't know. There's also the possibility that it's mostly the romance of these two characters, which is not really something I cared that much about, to be honest with you. And so I may pick up the second book and check it out, but the things I would have liked more of in the first book would have been more of the exploration. Even if you had like Ada Core go on the run or something and like try to go into these different aspects of the society by just kind of having a road trip, I thought that would have been more interesting than having this court system, because the court system doesn't really tie to me in particularly well to the idea of Neanderthals based on everything that we know about them. Like the idea that they would have this different system, it seems like the system is mostly based on, and I'm inferring, because they have this technology that allows people to record things, and you're like, oh, is that the reason that the court system is so maybe slighted or weighed against the defendants? Is that the only reason? And so, yeah, so those were my issues with the book. I thought it was interesting. I can see why it won the Hugo. I didn't hate it. I didn't love it. I think if you're a fan of sci-fi, you'll enjoy this. If you're a fan of speculative fiction, you're just kind of like looking at different worlds and stuff, I think you'll enjoy this. So next time I'm going to be reading a recommendation from one of the viewers, and I will have that out probably the next couple weeks. If you have liked this video, please subscribe to the channel, like the video below. Feel free to leave a comment in the comment section. I get the sense this is a relatively well-known and well-liked book, but I haven't gone in too deep into the reviews on it. But let me know, and I'll also have my Twitter link below too if you want to check me out there, the Twitter address. Until next time, bye.